And so, 5 years passed. I was now around 7 years old, but it seemed there was no custom of celebrating birthdays in this world. When I asked, I learned they use a counting style system where you start at 1 year old. Each time the new year comes, you add 1 to your age. The fact that it didn't start at 0 made me worry that perhaps the concepts of the number 0 and positional notation didn't even exist here, but it seems they do. Apparently, it's a tradition from an era before 0 was established as a clear numerical concept, so babies are considered 1-year-old from the moment they're born. I suppose it makes sense that the way people count their age wouldn't change so easily. So, by this world's counting system, I'd probably be 7 plus 1, making me 8 years old. With that settled, I asked when the new year was, only to receive the outrageous answer, "We don't know." Well, to be precise, they all knew which day the new year began. It was the day of the year when the day is shortest and the night is longest, the day the sun is at its weakest, and, from the next day onward, begins to regain its strength. The return of the light, in other words, the winter solstice, was the start of the new year. However, this was a temple on the outskirts of a ruined city, far removed from human society. None of the three had much interest in the calendar, and becoming undead had dulled their sense of hot and cold. As a result, they apparently lived by a vague sense of time, thinking things like, the flowers are starting to bloom, the sun is strong, the leaves are turning red and yellow, or it started to snow a little. I guess when you're just 3 people living with no external contact, you wouldn't bother with detailed astronomical observations. I don't know how long the 3 of them have been alive, but if you forgot the date or just couldn't be bothered to keep track, that would be the end of it. This is a bit of a tangent, but how do you measure the length of a day without a mechanical clock? I know people in the old days did it, so it must be possible. Did they use shadows or hourglasses and water clocks? Ah, wait. The position of the sunrise shifts from side to side depending on the length of the day, so maybe they made a mark every day, and the day the sun rose from the farthest point was it. Yes, I remember hearing a theory that famous sites like Stonehenge were facilities for this very purpose. I also have a vague memory of reading that some temples and shrines in Japan were aligned with the sunrise on the winter and summer solstices. Yeah, that's probably it. Probably. They might have used other methods as well, but I don't have enough information to speculate further. I guess this is the limit of my knowledge without the information support of modern infrastructure. It lacks depth. To get back on track. In any case, I've gathered a lot of information through questions and study since then, so it's time to organize my current situation. First, though I've been a bit hesitant to say it and still can't be completely certain, it seems I've been reborn. Reborn, reincarnated, rebirthed. The term doesn't really matter. In short, the memories from before I died are memories of a past life, and after dying, I was born again. What's more, it was into a different world. At least, in the world from my memories before I died, there was no such thing as magic, and there weren't skeletons or ghosts wandering around. Those were all products of fantasy. This means that while this world and my previous world share some common points, they are clearly different. So, I was reborn, a reincarnation into another world. Thinking about it logically, this conclusion seems mostly correct, but the reason I can't be certain is that there are a few other possibilities I can't completely rule out. This world has mysterious arts like magic, so these could be false memories implanted by such means. Or perhaps I simply have a brain abnormality and am just having strange delusions. Maybe I wasn't reborn, but since ghosts exist, this could be a case of possession or some kind of personality takeover. Or maybe the me here is just a hallucination, and the brain of the me from my previous memories is floating in a tank in some laboratory somewhere. Maybe. If I start listing the maybes, there's no end to it. Truly, no end. I could even delve into classic philosophical propositions like the brain in a vat problem. I think I'll lose my mind if I start worrying about such a fruitless question. I'll never find an answer. So, for now, I've decided to proceed with a tentative understanding that I was reincarnated into another world and just happened to have memories of my past life. It's the safest option and the one that allows me to remain the most mentally at peace. For example, I'd rather not entertain the idea that my true identity
is that of an evil spirit who crushed an innocent baby's mind and took over its body. I'm not saying I couldn't bear the guilt, but it would be depressing to think I was such a troublesome existence. An even worse scenario would be for the shocking truth to be revealed somewhere down the line, and I wake up as a brain in a vat. I sincerely pray that day never comes. And so, the reborn me, Will, at the counting age of 8, is currently in a world that is, once again, a dangerous place. Burning flamor! Flame ignis! Whoa! A wave of heat erupted with explosive force. I instinctively flinched back, and Gus sharply chanted a word of dispelling, blasting the flames in front of me out of existence. You fool, your pronunciation is too accurate. Being scolded for having accurate pronunciation is just unfair. Will, you are fortunate to have talent, but if you don't learn to control that precision, you'll die by your own magic. That's right. For example, the magic I'm learning now is incredibly dangerous. We're practicing on the hill in front of the usual temple just in case something happens. Gus, the results are all over the place. Is there really nothing you can do about this? Nothing. That's just how it is. The reproducibility is not very high. Even if I try to do the same thing I did yesterday, I can't produce the same phenomenon twice. Let me explain. Let's review. State the procedure for creating magic. There are 3 steps, right? Perceive the mana that fills the world, resonate it with your own mana, and then pronounce or inscribe the words of creation. You perceive and resonate with mana, the chaos at the origin of the world, the source of all things. Apparently, this requires a certain amount of talent and training. Then you pronounce or inscribe the words of creation, and with that power, you define and separate the chaotic mana filling the world into a specific form, like fire. That's all there is to it. But because it's so simple, there's very little room for adjustment, which is why it's hard to reproduce results consistently. As you say, there have been attempts since ancient times to achieve more uniform results. Many sages devised various methods, but there are limits. You understand now that you've practiced, don't you? Yeah. First of all, the mana isn't uniform. Over the past few years, Gus has taught me to sharpen my senses, and I finally started to get a feel for its presence. The mana that fills the world, the raw material and fuel for magic, isn't homogeneous at all. Imagine dropping a bit of ink into water and giving it a light stir. There are thick parts and thin parts, and it all flows irregularly. The fuel itself is like that. Indeed, there have been many attempts to create a uniform mana environment. Among them, sealing mana into stable gems or precious metals and using them yielded some success. But the cost was too high, right? And a person's internal mana is also in flux. Homogenizing only the external mana has its limits. Even if you can keep the external mana somewhat uniform, the user's internal mana, which you resonate with it, is still unstable. It swirls inside the body with its own thick and thin spots, just like ink and water. And apparently you can't meddle with that. The human body, I'm told, is far too complex to be manipulated by human perception. However, it is certainly effective, which is why a staff with a gem or precious metal is a symbol of a magic caster. Not that I use one. It seems Gus is the type who doesn't use a staff, but wizards with staves do exist in this world. It kind of excites my inner child. Well, I am a child right now. Furthermore, there are human fluctuations in speech and writing. A human can never speak the same word in exactly the same way twice. He probably means that even if the same person says the same word, the sound waves will be different, and if they write the same character, it will never be a perfect match. That's only natural, since it's a living person speaking or writing, not a machine. For the reasons above, the general conclusion is that you have no choice but to rely on intuition to find what works. So, the mass production of magic, like industrial products, is impossible. The conclusion is that you have to hail the artistry of a master mage who makes skilled adjustments according to the mood of the mana on any given day. That's scary. Magic is a frightening thing. I had wondered why the work of a creator god would be called something like demonic law, but if it's this risky, I can see why.
It's different from the magic in RPGs, where you just consume MP to pop out consistent results. This is much closer to the magic of classic fantasy. The words of creation are not to be brandished carelessly. The wielding of great power comes with commensurate risks. This is one of Gus's favorite sayings. According to Mary and Blood, Gus was an undeniably great magic caster even when he was alive. They spoke with great trust, saying that while he usually doesn't show it, his power is incredible when he unleashes it. But Gus himself never brags about such things. Well, we've had this talk many times. Instead, he only tells cautionary, moralistic tales. For example, the story of a magic caster who tried to alter the terrain triggered a massive earthquake and was swallowed by a fissure. The story of a magic caster who frequently manipulated the weather for sea voyages, causing abnormal climate patterns that led to famine. The story of a magic caster who transformed into an animal, but became so consumed by animalistic thoughts that he turned into a beast for good. The story of a magic caster who, trying to use a spell of universal dissolution on a hated enemy, got tongue-tied in his rage and blew himself up. There was even a magic caster who opened a portal to another dimension and was eaten by something on the other side. In any case, learn to use small spells skillfully and with precision, and, if possible, accomplish your goals without using them at all. Simple magic, like starting a fire, repelling insects, simple illusions for sleight of hand, or finding lost objects, has small effects, but the risk of mistakes is also small. No matter how much you fail, the worst you'll get is a painful injury. So, according to Gus, a true magic caster's ideal is to either not use magic at all or to achieve the greatest results with the smallest spells. Given that a single individual can wield enormous power and the possibility of accidents and human error is always present, I think that's a very sound philosophy. However, in other words, money! As a result of taking that philosophy to an extreme, Gus seems to have arrived at a rather incredible conclusion. I really don't think that's right. What are you saying? This is important. Gus, as eccentric as ever, speaks with utmost seriousness. If you want to do something, you don't need magic. Just buy the right tools or hire people. Altering the terrain is great magic, but with money, you can hire craftsmen and laborers and change the terrain with construction. The ability to earn and grow money is just as important as magic, if not more so. Gus leans forward, lecturing passionately, and I instinctively flinch back. What's with a ghost being a materialist? I regret it myself. Why can't I caress gold and treasure with my own two hands? You're a pervert? Oh, shut up. Who are you calling a pervert? You, Gus, you. How dare you? Fine, we're changing the lesson plan. Today, I shall educate you on the magnificence of money. Wah, what? And so, Gus's magic lessons sometimes devolve into lectures on this world's financial techniques and asset management. I have to admit, it's interesting in its own way, and I suppose it is a practical skill for surviving in this dangerous world. But a disembodied, magic-using ghost being like this? I'm not sure what to think. Or so I thought. But just how incredible Gus's knowledge and application of magic truly were, I was about to find out during my training with Blood.